Have you ever seen a mother cry when she lost her little boy? Or a mom and dad stand broken, for their son's life has been destroyed? Have you seen old age take those away who are special to your heart? Listen then to what I say. God makes no mistakes. God makes no mistakes. He knows the path you take. He brought you this far in life's way, and He'll never let you down. God makes no mistakes. Have you cried a river full of tears with an aching, broken heart? Have you prayed and prayed and no answer came in an hour oh so dark? Weeping may endure the night, but joy will come at dawn. And then, my friend, you too can say, God makes no mistakes. God makes no mistakes. He knows the path you take. He brought you this far in life's way, and He'll never let you down. God makes no mistakes. Eyes not seen and ears not heard what the Father has for you. So until the day He calls us home, let me say to you, God makes no mistakes. He knows the path you take. He brought you this far in life's way, and He'll never let you down. God makes no mistakes. He brought you this far in life's way, and He'll never let you down. God makes no mistakes. If you would turn in your Bibles to 1 Corinthians 10. If we're all being honest in here, I think sometimes it doesn't always seem that way in the moment. We all go through difficult times, whether it's times of uncertainty. You know, we had the high school graduation on Sunday. I remember just getting out of high school and the uncertainty, you know, things going on in my life, and it's just like, you know, it's like, why I wanted to know 4 steps down the road, right? But if we knew 4 steps down the road, we wouldn't have faith. And He wants us to trust in Him with all our heart and lean not on our own understanding. A lot of times we want to lean on our own understanding, but God makes no mistakes. And sometimes we might think He does in a lack of faith, but we're the ones that are mistaken. Let's go to Romans, or 1 Corinthians, I said. 1 Corinthians, chapter number 10. This was actually the opening verse from last week, but I'm going to take it in a much different direction. For sake of context, 1 Corinthians 10, it's talking about how we as God's people in this day and age, the church age, should go back and learn from the mistakes that were made by God's people in the Old Testament, by the mistakes that Israel made. And one of the big mistakes, as it talks about here in 1 Corinthians 10, is idolatry, and how they would go back and that they would worship idols. And actually one of the more famous verses from this book is given in the context of idolatry. I don't think we always think about it that way, but that's where we get verse number 13. But let's go ahead and back up to verse number 11. Now all these things happened unto them for ensamples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore let him that thinketh he standeth take heed, lest he fall. There hath no temptation taken you, but as such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. Wherefore, my dearly beloved, flee from idolatry. I speak as to wise men. Judge ye what I say. I want to bring out a couple quick points from here, and then we're going to go back to the Old Testament and we'll be done. It is my hope to not preach long tonight, so if you just listen with me here. First, and that's always dangerous saying that as a preacher, because then, people start looking at the clock. But point number one I want to make from this passage is idolatry is relevant today in the church age. Sometimes I think we look at, Israel and we're, they're so dumb. Why are they worshiping these gods made with hands? And why are they doing this? But here, we clearly see, as Paul writes to the church at Corinth, that one of the more famous verses in this entire book, where it's talking about there is no temptation taking you, but such as is common to man, is in the context, the verse directly after, wherefore, my dearly beloved, flee from idolatry. So I think that could make it potentially dangerous in this day and age where idolatry is relevant, but we don't always look at maybe the ways that we participate in idolatry as idolatry. It's a little bit more subtle today than I think it was when they just were worshiping Baal, or they're worshiping Molech, or all this stuff. It's a little bit more subtle for us today. It's not, a couple weeks ago, Brother Hale and I were soul winning, and we knock on a door, and we look in this house, and it was, I'm sure he remembers the house. It was just like they had this idol, and it was like an altar made to this idol in their living room. And it's like, this is already a small house. You do not have the square footage to be, letting an idol take up their place in that house. But it's like, we look at that and that's clear idolatry, right? We look at some of the stuff that the Catholic Church does, and it's like they're literally erecting idols, and it's like, we're not worshiping it, but we're just bowing and reverencing it and praying to it. It's like, that's worship. You know what I'm saying? We look at that and it's like, but we participate potentially in idolatry in other forms. The biggest form I see in the New Testament, and I'm going to be very brief with this, is covetousness. Colossians 3:5, you don't have to go there for sake of time, but it says covetousness, and names much sins, covetousness, which is idolatry. Ephesians 5:5, covetous man who is an idolater. Right? This materialistic society we live in, there's a lot of idolatry going on, but it isn't necessarily going on at the foot of an altar. It's going on in the altar of our heart. Covetous for greed. It's a greed for money, status, materialism, pleasure. It's what dominates our thoughts. It displaces in our heart that which belongs to God. We all need to be honest with ourselves. We're all different. What could potentially be something that's idolatry to me could have no effect on you, right? I think, and listen, here's this message. It's going to be a little bit, I hope it's challenging up front, and then at the end, I promise you it's going to be very encouraging. And in this thought, I've been meditating on it for weeks, and God has really worked in my heart through this thought. But I think a good test of what the tendency for us as an individual to potentially be given to idolatry, and just hear me out on this, is where our mind wanders to when we're in church. And that's kind of a surprising twist there, but I was thinking about it, and it's like the things that, if I'm being honest, right, what could be idolatry in my heart? If I'm being honest, it's the Bills, right? It's the Sabres. It's sports. And, maybe in the summer it's a little easier, but the way I'm wired, I grew up watching this stuff, and I enjoy it. That can become idolatry. That stuff, if you think about it, right? If from a extraterrestrial perspective on Earth, if they were to look at Orchard Park, New York, if they were to look at Erie County, and they were to say, what does this county worship? It is that Buffalo Bills logo. It's like we go to these houses and we soul in, and it's like their house is decked out they just reverence Josh Allen. They reverence the Bills. And it's like, is it wrong to watch football? Honestly, I don't think so. But it can be if it becomes idolatry. I think about, maybe for you, I've seen people, they're workaholics. We've worked, and it's like all they can think about is the next job and the next job and the next job. It's like, oh, well, just once I get done with this job, then my mind will be free and clutter-free. But then the next job comes and the next job and the next job. It's like, I own a little electrical business, and I understand it's like, oh, finally, like, clear schedule, just a night with the wife, like clear mind. And it's like I get that call, and it's the next job, and it's the next job, and then the next job. And before you know it, you have given your entire life to something that is it displaces in our heart, in our mind, that which belongs to God. I'm not saying, obviously, even more so than entertainment, than the Bills or whatever, we need to work. And it's clear that God uses hardworking people. Right, and it's like that is obviously a virtuous thing, but it can become idolatry. Where our mind wanders to when we're in church. The reason God's been convicting me about that is like, this is a time right from, I don't know, we'll probably go till 8:15 or whatever. This is a time we've set apart for God. It's like we have very busy schedules, Americans. We're going all the time, but it's like for about for an hour 15, we're going to set this apart for the Lord. And then the idols start to creep into our mind, into the altar of our heart. And I just think that we need to be honest with ourselves. Some of the worst lies we tell are the lies we tell ourselves. We give ground to the devil, and we think, oh, well, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that morally. But it can become idolatry. Idolatry is relevant today in the church age. And sometimes we're maybe being a little bit idolatry. It's like, in the times where I'm most in the flesh, sometimes we go to church, if we're just being honest, because we go to a lot of church. Sometimes we go to church almost to just get out of church, right? It's like we're going, and it's like we're in it, and then like get a couple minutes into the preaching, and it's like, okay, we got to get on with the week. This is not good. And this represents a potential problem with our heart. And I'm just saying, I'm not pointing the finger at you and saying, you're wicked and fleshy. I'm just maybe just doing a little bit of self-examination tonight for myself. And I think that we'd all do some good. As it says, like Paul says in verse number 14, wherefore, my dearly beloved, flee from idolatry. I speak as to wise men, judge ye what I say. And that's all I'm saying tonight. I believe there's a lot of wise, mature Christians in this room. But Paul clearly says here, he's speaking to wise men. He's not speaking to baby Christians. And I'm just simply asking, would you judge what I say? Would you be honest? Would you have that David mentality of search me, O God, and try my heart, try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked ways in me? If David needed it, if Paul needed it, if the wise men of Corinth needed it, we needed to do it as well. Number two, it's a real temptation. I think idolatry, you look at Israel, a lot of times where things were going bad, they turned to idolatry. When Moses was away for a little bit, they go to the golden calf. When things start to go bad, they yearned for the ways in Egypt, whatever. You just look at, it seems when things go bad, they tend to go back towards idolatry. I think some people are certainly that way. Times get bad and you start to doubt God and have a lack of faith, all this stuff. If I'm being honest with myself, and that's what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to be a wise man and judge what Paul's saying here. I think idolatry in my heart sometimes happens when everything is good. And it's like I start to slip on my personal devotions. I start to slip in just having that zeal and that fire for the Lord in my comfort. And sometimes God has to give me a little slap on the wrist to get me back in order. Maybe, God forbid, something bad has to happen for God to get my attention. That's just the way I am. Sometimes it's like we're not just idolatrous in the bad times, and we're just we're lack of faith in God. We're just turning into something else completely, giving our life to something else. That does happen, I think, in the church where people turn away from the Lord. But I think a lot of times in the church today, idolatry happens when everything's good and we just get into the motions. And it's like we start to slip on some stuff that maybe God doesn't want us to slip on. It's a real temptation. Number 3 from this passage, it isn't just for ignorant people. I already mentioned this. Wise men must examine themselves as well. So let's go back to Isaiah 46. Isaiah 46. We're going to be looking at some of the false gods of Babylon that Israel certainly was involved with from time to time. And here we're going to have Isaiah poking at these false gods. In verse number 1, Bel boweth down, Nebo stoopeth. Their idols were upon the beasts and upon the cattle. Your carriages were heavy laden. They are a burden to the weary beasts. They stoop, they bow down together. They could not deliver the burden, but themselves are gone into captivity. So here we have two of the Babylonian gods, Bel and Nebu. You might recognize that from Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar. They were named after these false gods. Bel, meaning master and lord. Master and lord. You know, in Belshazzar, the king, his name meant master, protect the king, right? So it's just their whole culture was geared towards this god. And Bel meaning master or lord. And really, again, just going back to 1 Corinthians 10, who is the master and the Lord of our life, not just in word, but if we were to just boil down what dominates our thought life, what dominates our free time, what dominates we're giving undue reverence to things that really don't deserve it. And here, this is what Isaiah is saying. He's saying, your gods, Bel and Nebu, right, they stoop. What would happen is they would have these, is this mic on? Okay, I'm going to walk away. They would have these parades, right? Babylonians would have these parades, and almost like the Macy's Day Parade, right, on Thanksgiving. And they got these big, that's when they would bring out the big idols. Thousands and thousands of pounds, these idols that they erected, and that they would put them on carts. And people would carry the idols, and their back, like people would just get injured under the weight of these idols. Their oxen in the whatever's pulling them in the yoke, they're straining at how heavy these idols are. And what Isaiah is saying here, he's saying, isn't it weird that you worship your gods, so to say, are gods that you have to prop up. You are the ones that are going to have to carry them. Verse number 2, they stoop, they bow down together. They could not deliver the burden, but themselves are gone into captivity. It's like you're carrying your gods, and it's like you're carrying them for deliverance, but it's like they're not doing any deliverance for you. If they're going to be delivered anywhere, you're the one that's going to have to deliver them. And it's like, how does that apply to us today? When we prop up things that don't belong in the place of God, they're not going to get anywhere unless we're the ones carrying them around. And it's like they become the weight. They become the burden that we carry. It's like humans are designed, every human, I am convinced, every single human in this world worships something. If there is a God-shaped hole in the heart of every man and woman on this planet, I just believe it. Everybody gives their life to something. But if we worship the wrong things, it's like we're propping up things that are just going to become a burden. It's like, if we're going to, I remember working with these guys. I used to do lineman work for RG&E, which is like the utility out in Rochester. And I would work with these guys, and really hardworking individuals. Some of them just getting up. It's like we'd have to get to work at 6, and I'm like, "What time do you get up?" 3:30 a.m. 3:30 a.m. Like, I'm in REM at 3:30 a.m. You know, and getting up super early, driving an hour into work, and it's like always working overtime, always working weekends, and it's like they would literally sell their soul to the company. They loved the work, they loved the money as well, and they would serve the job. And the thing is they would lose their family in the process. Almost, I really had an awakening where I was, I'm trying to save up money because I want to buy a house and all that stuff. And there's absolutely, again, I hope you don't misconstrue this. There's nothing wrong with, especially as a man, you got to be a provider. You got to be a hard worker. You have to bear the weight of your family. And I think that doing that as a young man, the Bible literally says in the Bible, it is good for a young man to bear his yoke in his youth. And I think that's spiritually, taking your spiritual life for yourself, but it's also literally like, I think it's good to labor with your hands. Be a man. Be able to work late into the night. That's good stuff. But just as the case with any idolatry in our life, once it starts to dominate our heart and dominates our thoughts and it just dominates our life, it becomes an idol that we worship. I got this in my notes somewhere. The work long hours, their entire life, all this stuff. Back in the day, they would call that false god Mammon, right? Mammon was literally the god of materialism. People who worshipped, people you see now today, again, they worship sports, or it could be entertainment, just pleasure, just they're always like, they're just working to get back on the next big experience, or go to the next big football game or whatever. And it's like all they're doing, they're just looking at their clock the entire time because they're like, okay, I just got to see the Bills play, Or it's just like they dedicate their heart and soul and all their thoughts towards this. They serve pleasure. Back in the Bible days, that god was called Molech, the god of pleasure. There's nothing new under the sun, is what I'm trying to say. And when Paul writes about this being a real struggle for us in the church age, it just has different labels on it today. And maybe it's a little bit more subtle. Today, people serve their lusts. They serve, I know we have a young crowd here, but we all know people that they're driven by their passions. They're driven by their lusts, just to keep it, kind of clean tonight. It's like they serve a god of lust. Back in the day, that would be called the god of Ashtaroth, the fertility god. It's like they're driven by it. These things ought not so to be in the church. But going back to Isaiah 46, when we make these things our God, whether it's, even if you're a young teenager, it's like that girl that dominates your thoughts, that guy that dominates your thoughts, you're propping up these things. And it's like they might have some temporary satisfaction, but what you're not realizing is you're setting yourself up to carry a God that you're going to have to carry around. And if it's going to get anywhere in your life, you're going to be the one carrying it. It's going to become a burden to you. It's like sometimes these people, they serve drugs and all this stuff. It's like, or even just addictions. You start to do the addiction, and you feel that buzz at the beginning. You feel all this stuff. But then as you get down the line, whether it's drinking or whatever it is, everybody I've talked to, at work or in my family, my unsafe family, it's like they just start doing it to just scratch the itch. It doesn't even give them, it's literally a burden that they have to carry the rest of their life. And they have to be the one that's carrying it. It does nothing for them of lasting value. They would have to carry their false gods. Also, in verse number 6, they lavish gold of the bag, and weigh silver in the balance, and hire a goldsmith, and he maketh it a god. They fall down, yea, they worship. And Isaiah is saying, they're worshiping things that they made. How silly is that? Where it's like, oh, we need something to worship. We need something to give our life to. And as humans, we all have that desire. We got to attach we have to feel like there's a purpose. We have to, where are they getting their purpose or whatever? And so they're like, we don't have a false god. Let's just make one with our hands. And let's spend a lot of gold and money and all this stuff. And boom, we're going to worship a god. And Isaiah's saying, that's ridiculous to worship anything that's made by human hands. Nothing that's made by human hands deserves our worship. But they would have to carry around these burdens of these false gods. And so today, if we carry around false gods, it might be something that is enjoyable at the beginning, but eventually down the line, whether it takes weeks, months, years, it'll be a burden to us. God is not designed us to carry around these false gods. God is not designed us, as it says in verse number 6, to make up these false gods in our life. It's like, to one person, if the Buffalo Bills win the Super Bowl, it's like they can just die and just their whole entire life is complete. To another person, they don't care at all. They don't care if the Bills are in Buffalo. Like, it does not make a difference to them. The thing is what's the difference? This person made up the Bills to be something important. This person doesn't. But here's the difference between false gods, potentially. Again, nothing wrong with the Bills. I love the Bills. If you want to watch a Bills game in our house this year, I'm down. That sounds great. That sounds like fun. As long as it's not during church, amen, you know? But it's like, it's only as important as we make it. Okay, just going to the end a little bit. It doesn't matter how important God is in your life, how important you make God in your life. He's high and lifted up no matter what. That's a God that deserves our worship. But I gotta let's keep building this up. They would carry around their gods. They would make their gods. And then eventually, verse number 7, they bear him upon the shoulder. They carry him and set him in his place. And he standeth. They're worshiping. Imagine worshiping gods. They can't even stand up on their own. They can't even be delivered. They can't even walk somewhere. And Isaiah is saying, that's ridiculous. But here, listen. We prop up things in our life that are just as silly if we're just being honest with ourselves. As we, as it says in 1 Corinthians 10, as wise men, consider what Paul's saying. We prop up dumb stuff too. Where it's like, going back to, I just keep using this. Please just insert whatever God. We all know ourselves. How stupid it is in the grand scheme of eternity for me to be thinking about, it's like, man, I can't wait to watch this wide receiver matchup against this defensive person in the Bills game. And it's like, when somebody's up here and they're literally proclaiming the truth of the Word of God. How stupid it is for us to be worried and concerned and just be so, working out the materials list for our job tomorrow morning when somebody's up here preaching the Word of God. And I'm just saying, if we're going to, these false gods only have significance if they'll only be delivered to somewhere. They're only going to get anywhere in our life if we're the ones that put them on our back, if we're the ones that make them up to be this important thing, and we're the ones to deliver them wherever they go. But it says, but here's the real warning of Isaiah. In verse number 7, it talks about them being delivered. It talks about, in verse number 2, they themselves are gone into captivity. It's like they are worshiping things, and the real issue they need to be concerned about is this nation, Israel, is about to go into captivity by the Babylonians. And the very gods that they're worshiping are created by the people that are going to be their downfall. And even so today, we worship the things, when we worship the things of this world, we are worshiping what is the downfall of our society, when in reality we need to be worshiping the one and true living God. But why I love this passage is what Isaiah does to contrast the false gods with the real one true God. Again, they would carry around their gods. They would be as a burden unto them. They would make up their gods. If the gods were going to stand up or be delivered wherever they go, they would have to be the ones that literally take it off the cart and deliver it wherever it's going to go. But this is what Isaiah says about the one true living God. In verse number 3, hearken unto me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, which are born by me from the belly, which are carried from the womb. And even to your old age I am he, and even to your hoar hairs will I carry you. I have made you, and I will bear you, and even I will carry and will deliver you. Whereas they had to make their false gods, the Babylonians had to make their false gods, God made us. It says in verse number 3, we are born from my belly. God birthed that nation. And God was all over the birth of Israel. And so too you today. God is all over. I don't know your exact story, but God is all over your birth. You think about all the things that had to come together. Your parents had to be in the right place at the right time. It's like we all have our stories. It's like my mom, my mom was divorced, And she just happened to meet my dad at a non-denominational church. And it's like, they didn't know each other, but my mom already had 2 kids, and they were they lived way far away from each other. They just happened to meet one day and got married and had me. Okay, that I guarantee you that is a low-level story as far as some of the great stories that are in this room as far as like how you were brought into this world. And woe unto us, this God that orchestrated the birth of your life, even just if you understand anything about birth. I was talking to a guy the other day. I was working, I installed like a hot tub on his back deck, and he was talking about how his wife is pregnant. And he said how, he's like, yeah, we've had a bunch of miscarriages and stuff, and he's like, we've come to realize, and this is an unsaved man. This guy was not a Christian, did not know the Lord. He goes, we've come to realize that every birth, after all these miscarriages, is a miracle. And when you hold that little baby boy or baby girl, it's a miracle. But we seem to forget that as God's people sometimes. We just take it for granted. It's like, yeah, whatever. I was born to these parents. I won the geographical lottery by being in America right now. It's like, think of all the places, all the third world nations where it's very difficult, where they make $30 US dollars a month. And they work twice as hard as any of us in this room. And it's like, we could have absolutely lived there. But we have a God who made us. And before he formed us in the belly, he knew us and has a purpose and a plan for us. But yet we tend to give our thoughts and our lives and our efforts, and it dominates our hearts, it dominates our minds, to things that just did not do that. They did not birth us. Just as God was all over the birth of the nation of Israel, God is all over the birth of you. If you're a second generation Christian and you were born in this church, you are so lucky to be in a church surrounded by people that love the Lord and care about you. And a lot of these people in this room have given their lives to teaching you and raising you up and being your teacher in school, being your teacher in Sunday school, cleaning the building, all this stuff. Give your life to that God. There's nothing else worth giving your life to. They had to make their false gods. If they were going to have any importance, if they were going to have all the intricacies and all the designs, they would have to make their false gods. But our true God, he made us. Not only did he make us, but he carries us. Verse number 4, I carry you, I have made you, and I will bear you. And he says it even a second time, even I will carry you. You can see God is talking to his people, and he knows that they're going to turn in the way that they're not supposed to go, that they're going to give themselves to idolatry. They're going to go into captivity by their own choices, because they have a God that's saying time and time again, I will carry you, I will carry you, I will carry you through life. You don't need to trust in mammon. You don't need to trust in materialism. You don't need to trust in be driven by your lust. You don't have to trust the God of pleasure, Moloch. You just let me carry you. We have a God. The reason we should worship him as God, one of the reasons is we don't carry him as a God. He carries us. And whereas the gods that they would make with their hands, they would have to literally bear them. And what does Jesus say? My yoke is easy and my burden's light. And it's like, we serve a great God. And not only the things that he gives us are his yoke is easy, burden is light, but he literally carries us through our life. Think about that. God should have given up on Israel long before he wrote that. And so today, if we're being honest, God should have given up on us. God should have given up on us a long time ago. But he didn't. And he carried you. He carried you to think about the great things that you got to do for God and with God and all the great, I think about the bus ministry and the miracles that have been wrought in people's lives and the souls getting saved and all the great things that have gone on in this church for years upon years. You didn't deserve to be the servant that got to be a part of that. It wasn't from your own merit. It wasn't from your own goodness. It's because we serve a God that carries us. God should have given up on Israel long before he wrote that. And the same with us today. We don't deserve to do this, but he carries us. Lastly, he will deliver us. Whether you're just getting out of high school and you don't exactly have a clear sense of direction for what God has for you, or you're about to get out of high school, or you have uncertainty in your life, or you got all these kids and you got to raise them, and you're just like, how am I gonna do all this right? It just is over. Whatever it is, if you're attempting anything worth doing, it's going to be a little overwhelming, right? Our frame is dust, the Bible says. But praise the Lord, as it says at the end of verse number 4, and will deliver you. Amen. For sake of time, we all know the verse, but in Romans 8:28 talks about, for we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to his purpose. I believe in my heart that I'm talking to a room full of people that love the Lord. That's why you're here on a Wednesday night. And any gripe, we gotta look at it this way. Any gripe against the situations or the circumstances of our life, if we're going to boil it down, it's kind of a lack of faith, and it's kind of a gripe against God, because we serve the God, it says in Romans 8:28, for we know that all things work together for good to them that love God. It doesn't mean that there isn't hard times. It doesn't mean that people are going to make dumb decisions around us. It doesn't mean that people are going to make sinful decisions. But what it does mean is we know that it's all going to work out together for good for them that love God. And as it says in the Old Testament, New Testament, all over the Bible, we serve a God that no matter how hard the opposition is, no matter how difficult life gets, he will deliver you. He will deliver you to raise children that serve the Lord. If you would let him do that work of grace that he wants to do in your life, that work of grace he wants to do in your kid's life, he will deliver you. If you trust not on your own understanding, but just in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. If you don't need to know 4, 5, 6 steps down the road, and instead you can just trust him and have faith to take that next step, he will deliver you. If you want to try something great for the Lord, and you go and you fast and you pray and you try to get God's direction for your life, and you're like, I really think God wants me to do this, whatever he doesn't call the enabled, he enables the called. And he will deliver you to do something great for him. And each of us, even if we're not called to full-time ministry or whatever, God has a full-time, great, amazing plan that he will deliver you if we get on board. The sad thing about this passage is Israel didn't get on board, and they were delivered into captivity because they wanted to do things their own way. The Babylonians had gods that they had to make, and they had to carry. And if those gods were going to get anywhere, they had to deliver them. But we tonight, we serve a God that made you and will carry you through life and has been carrying you through life. And he will deliver you. But we got to get on board. And we can't give our hearts and lives to things that just don't deserve that preeminence. Heads are bowed, eyes are closed.